Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing right now. Hello world, I'm Chris Pirillo, streaming live on YouTube for the second time today. I did record and stream my thoughts on iOS 7 earlier in the day, but I thought I could do the video better, and I know that many of you would have missed out on the live broadcast. There's never a perfect time, that being said. I made sure to send out a new push notification to all of you who have downloaded not just iOS 7, but the free Locker Gnome app available for iOS and Android that would take you right to this very page to watch the live video. So the push did go out. Hopefully you guys have been paying attention to everything that's been going on in social media today. The world is kind of going nuts over iOS 7, and the reviews are very mixed. Even my perspective, my thoughts on iOS 7 are mixed. In fact, just a couple of seconds ago, I tweeted saying that just because I don't like bits of iOS 7 doesn't mean I hate Apple any more than just because I don't like bits of Android doesn't mean I hate Google. I mean, you can feel free to like and dislike things. It's down to a personal choice. So my review is based on my experience with iOS 7 over the past couple of weeks, really, and living with it primarily on my iPhone and partially then on my iPads, not just the regular iPad, but also the iPad mini. I've been using the GM build, or the Gold Master build, which for all intents and purposes is the same build that went out to the entire world today. I believe internet traffic went up by like 112% with everybody downloading iOS 7 right now just to see what it's about. You know, everyone wants the latest and greatest software, and some people are very happy with the updates. But me, not to give you any spoilers, but I would give iOS a 7 out of 10 on the iPhone, a 6 out of 10 on the iPad, and I hope to qualify that for you in this particular video. So thanks again. If you did watch this video earlier live on YouTube, I appreciate the support. Thanks for coming here and participating now. I believe, if I check, we have, oh, very nice, 441 people who've tuned in. We had like 1,100 people earlier today, which tells me we should probably be doing live streams earlier in the day. But hundreds of you have decided to like this video before it was broadcast, so thanks again for the support. Is iOS 7 worth upgrading to? This is a question that has come in from the community, and I will do my best to answer that. I think it is. It's unavoidable. You may not like everything about it, but hopefully Apple will continue to refine what iOS is, and certainly it will get better on newer hardware, which would make it more responsive, and I'll get to that point with my rubric, which I've outlined in this video's description. I'm just basing this on notes that I've taken here on the Notes application on the iPad. I use that more than anything, even though I should probably switch to Evernote. I sometimes just need simple text notes that synchronize between all my devices, and Notes works well enough. So you can't get to Notes from every single device. Now that you got me thinking about it, even though you didn't really get me thinking about it, I should probably switch to Evernote to get to all my notes from every device. Speed bump. Are you going to see a faster device on iOS 7 on an existing piece of hardware from Apple, like an iPhone 5 or an iPad 4th generation? No. Some people have said that their devices are faster. I don't know if that's a placebo effect, but in my experience, my iPhone 5, 64 gig, black right here, did not get any faster with iOS 7 compared to iOS 6. There are certain things that are faster to do, but that's less to do with speed optimizations that Apple may or may not have done. For example, now you have the control center. You swipe up from the bottom of the screen. You get into all these features that you can toggle. You can even ask Siri, please turn off my Bluetooth.
Sorry, but I'm not able to change that setting.
Can't change the setting, but wait a minute. What, you really? You know, I try to give Siri a chance every single time, and it's so disappointing. Siri is out of beta now. You could use a male voice. Whoopee! It still doesn't work that well. So, there you go. That's been my experience with iOS 7. Things that are better, in theory, just don't seem to be fully fleshed out yet. And unfortunately, Apple no longer has that first mover advantage, giving it a leg up over the competition. And I don't really want to spend too much time speaking about hardware versus the software experiences that I've had, but suffice it to say that is a perfect example of the kind of touch and go experiences I've had with iOS 7 as they've released it today. Not much of a speed bump, if any at all. In fact, I would say many animations have dropped frames on the iPad and the iPhone in my usage. In terms of an ethos, a design ethos, we're talking about, the feel and the look, the UI, not so much the UX. Very pastel-y, impossible to get past that, frustrating. I've yet to find a wallpaper that I like to use. I do like the parallax effects, which are very difficult to really demonstrate in the video, but effectively, what they've done with iOS 7 is created different layers for all these elements, like all these app folders are at one level, your background or your wallpapers at a different level. And so your control center is at a completely different level. So you have all these levels that are really on this single plane that in software create a more 3D effect. And as you tilt the phone around, you have that parallax effect coming to life. I think that that was a nice addition. The transparency in places works well. So if I swipe down and pull down the notification center and swipe between the screens, you can see the transparency works quite well in this context. Where I don't think it works well is in specifically context menus. So you have to pardon as I open this up, and I'm going to open up a message back to me so that I'm not giving out anybody's details that I should not be giving out. Copy. Let's go ahead and paste that to show you a context menu. So that context menu, when you select an option, that button goes transparent. It just looks a little unrefined, unpolished. I mean, it works, but certain design aspects of iOS 7 just seem half-baked. Not the least of which are the icons. So the ethos seems to be a step in a better direction, but severely unpolished. And I'm not just talking about the icons. I'm not just talking about the transparencies. I mean, as a whole, the entire experience of iOS 7, and I think this would hold true on the iPad, the iPhone, or even newer iOS devices, needs some fleshing out. I do not believe whoever made these design decisions should be in charge of making software design decisions. I'm not the only one who believes that. Some people like it. Hey, if you like the design and the changes they made, good for you. I think it looks amateurish. In fact, I think the design looks a lot like an Apple knockoff. So, ease of transition, moving from iOS 6 to 7, I think you'd be fine. You're not going to have the exact same features in iOS 6 as you did in 7. In some cases, you'll be able to get to the features in an easier way. So, for example, you now have the weather written out in English or your language. You can select that, and it would open up your default weather app, and then you could look at the app. Oh, look, okay, that's the weather. It's going to be hot today. So the feature's there, but it's kind of changed. And I don't think you're going to have too many problems moving from iOS 6 to iOS 7. Today, we've seen a cavalcade of app updates, and one of my favorite features of iOS 7 is the fact that apps will now auto-update. Apple is also... this may be important for you to listen to if you update or you plan on using auto update. Don't use it over cellular necessarily because they've bumped the minimum from 50 megabytes to 100 megabytes for an app download over 3G versus over Wi-Fi. So you may run up your data if you have big games that you are downloading updates for over cellular networks, just FYI. Ease of transition, I would say it was great. It was not a problem. If you're familiar with iOS, you're familiar enough with iOS 7 that you'll be okay. It just looks different, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It's just different. Change for the sake of change, though, just seems to be a little awkward in places. iOS 7, I will go on record by saying it feels rushed. And I realize I'm saying this at breakneck speed because I'm trying to get through all the points I want to make. Legibility. This is something I wanted to point out. I've had an issue trying to find the best wallpaper to use for iOS because it skews light. If you're a white iPhone owner, you're going to love iOS 7. But if you're into darker colors, you're probably going to hate it. It skews very pastel, and there have been times when it's been very difficult to read the text on the screen, which can be adjusted in the settings. In fact, using TextKit, which is a new addition to iOS 7, should make scaling of text a bit easier. But I found that I really didn't want to have to tweak the text size inside of iOS in order to get the optimum experience. Still, I could adjust the slider here in the general settings. They updated sounds as well. It sounds like they spent more time adjusting the sound quality of the sounds in iOS 7 than they did on the overall user experience of iOS. I know I keep hammering that. It's just my experience. So when legibility comes into play, like I was on a phone call with Diana, my wife, And you know how, and I'm not going to do it right now, but there's a green bar at the top and you'd have the text over it. Before, I could see the text just fine. Because the color palette in iOS 7 skews so pastel-y and neon and bright, it was impossible for me, and still is impossible for me, to read white text on a bright color. Whose idea was that? How did that make it out of planning stages? I mean, for a company that allegedly takes care of things that you don't need to think about, and they did in certain areas, they just seem to really screw it up in other areas. I expect more from Apple. Shame on them. This is where it's been frustrating. When it works, and it works better than it did before, I'm happy. But when it's a change for the sake of change, that's absolutely maddening. Don't get me wrong. People would be upset with Apple if they didn't change enough. I'm just saying, the state of the icons, how haphazard they are. Some are flat. Some look like they were designed in Microsoft Paint. Some look like they were designed by an intern that was hired out of high school. The icons, I think, represent iOS 7 very well. Very haphazard, still a questionable UI, and frustrating at about every turn. Not every turn. Some things did get better. My recommendation is still get it, because you may like it. You never know until you try it. In terms of responsiveness, for the most part, it was smooth. For example, if I go into Task Switcher, and after I've cached all the open apps, or the apps that I had opened previously, it is smooth. However, while they're loading, because the single core aspect of the CPU is a bit taxed, there is some amount of stuttering and jumpiness. They did not change the springboard so much in terms of responsiveness. I did think, though, that by keeping pages, they did the right thing, if only because by memory, I know that I swipe over 2 times and go to this position, I can get to this particular folder. And if it wasn't, or the springboard wasn't paginated like that, it'd be more difficult. Getting to Spotlight is now a swipe down from any part of the springboard. That is very appreciated. Spotlight works just as well now as it did before. In terms of multitasking, you now have, just like many other modern mobile operating systems, screenshots of what was last taken from any particular app that was open. To clear an app, you simply swipe away, or look at it, I don't know if you knew this, you can use 3 fingers to swipe 3 apps away, but when you do, sometimes it's a little buggy. You can see an icon is left over there and I can't kill that app. Can't even really open it. It did open. Okay, it opened to my Amazon Cloud Player, but it's just a little weird bugs. That's okay. It's version 1 of a new version of an operating system. In terms of iPhone implementation, it is iOS. Don't expect radical changes in terms of what you have experienced with iOS. If you use a lot of third-party apps, they're going to be updated. It's more of the feel of the OS that's been updated more than for consumers, the average user, more than the OS itself. You know, you're not going to see a different springboard. You're going to see minor differences, but not anything that, if you're an average user who just likes their iPhone, I think you're going to like the update. Someone who looks after like very small details and is very detail oriented, I'm concerned about a few changes. One of the things that I wanted to speak to specifically in relation to iPhone implementation and iPad implementation are the folders. And I have to point this out because at first I was a little dismayed. They've changed somewhat. So if I tap my social folder, I get 9 icons, and it's paginated, so I can flip back and forth between the pages of the folders. They work a lot like mini springboards, so they're paginated that way. You see how many icons in a thumbnail for a folder? 9. And as you tap to expand it, how many do you see? 9. That, I would say, is a better implementation of folders than earlier versions of iOS. That has a few people concerned on, let's say, the iPad, because they say, look at this big screen. If I tap that icon, I only get 9 icons in the folder, and it's paginated too. Well, think about it. How many icons do you see in the thumbnail mode? Now, how many icons do you see in a larger mode? I think that's okay. I don't think that's a problem. I think Apple did make the right decision design-wise with that. Believe it or not, I agree with something that many people don't agree with what Apple did. But that's just, again, been my experience with using iOS. The iPad implementation, many people have reported in using GM and beta builds that it's been a little sloppy. They still need to refine it. Some people don't like iOS 7 on their iPad at all. But I can tell you this, it is absolutely buggy. There are some UX and UI issues that they need to work through. It's just sloppy in places. I more so on the iPad than on the iPhone. And that's not just because of some dropped frames that I've seen and some stutteriness that I've seen in animations and transitions on the current generation iPad and current generation iPhone. I think it's the software is, it needs to be a bit more polished. And that's, they need to work on it big time. But hey, it's a free upgrade, so I can't complain too loudly, I guess. In terms of defaults, default apps and the experiences therein, they work. The apps certainly work. Are you going to see radical changes between what you saw before and what you have now? Maybe some minor differences that are going to make a big difference for you. iTunes Radio, potentially a Pandora killer. You've also got, I think, a better weather app, an updated weather app. Also now have in the Compass application, although I need to calibrate it again. I keep calibrating this damn thing. Why can't it remember? I was going to show you that there's now a level that's built into the Compass app, which isn't really so much a compass as it is a level, but you got to have your compass level in order to true north. Some updates to the clock application, cleaner, I would say nicer, but that much nicer, it's all relative. I don't know who the hell designed the voice memos application, and I thought we were all about flat design with icons in iOS 7 and flat, so why is Game Center 3D, the bubbles? What? Huh? Do you know? I'm talking to a Darth Vader across my office because I don't know the answer, and I don't think anybody does. In terms of sharing, I'm disappointed, and I don't want to dig too deep into features that are missing or lacking, but I do believe that there is room for growth. I downloaded Infinity Blade for free earlier, thanks to go.tagjag.com/free points. Infinity Blade 3 is available right now. Normally costs $7. Got it for free with a redeem code earned with free points through that sponsor. The link is in this video's description. But if I go to share this, it's interesting. Okay, well, apparently my share icon was where I was not expecting it to be. Oh, look at that. AirDrop is enabled, so I can tap my icon here and share it to myself over here. Nice. And so let's see here. I will accept that even though it's me. That's a very convenient feature. Also, I'm curious to know when they're going to open this up to other social networks so I can share to Twitter, Facebook, Flickr, potentially Vimeo. Why not Google? Why not open up that API call? And then at the bottom, the system level features are done in an outline mode, just like the rest of the icons for system level features in other applications. They were consistent with that, and I guess that was good enough for most, at least to get us going. In terms of battery life, I don't think iOS 7 gave me any better battery life than iOS 6 did. So I didn't see any big gains with current gen hardware. Maybe other people did. I use my phone all the time and tend not to think about battery life, though. You may have had different experiences, but to me, if there was a difference, it wasn't dramatic. Siri, I reflected upon that. More features, if you can count on it, and Siri is still something that you can't necessarily count on. If you really like what Siri could do for you, download the free Google application. Google access the microphone. Do I want more from Google? Sure, why not? I like Google. Oh yeah, look at that. What is the unladen... Oh, wait, I screwed that up. Oh, my bad. Hang on, back up. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
Did you mean airspeed velocity of an unladen European swallow?
Ah, no, African. It's a Monty Python joke. Google just works. Apple, kind of-ish. I mean, you could do this. Send a tweet. Because that's the only way to access that feature now.
Here's your tweet. Ready to send it?
Feeling action feature now. Yeah, screw it. I'm going to send it. Everybody retweet it right now.
Okay, I sent it.
People are going to wonder, what the hell is Chris talking about? They'll watch this video and they'll know. So there you go. That's how you tweet and post to Facebook in iOS 7. You have to speak it because there's no more buttons that you would normally see in the notification center. Glad they kind of cleaned that up. App compatibility, I think it's going to come. I think the new design ethos is better overall, but Apple still needs to clean things up. The Notes app, for example, is textured. I thought everything was flat. Why is Notes still textured? Why? It's just like someone didn't pay attention to detail. I'm like, do we not appreciate Apple for its attention to detail? So why are they not paying attention to detail? Just curious. I just want to know. And all those experiences added up, really brought me to my scores that I shared with you at the beginning of the video. Things I like. Parallax. It is fun when it works well. I like the control center, being able to swipe up and get to things like turning on the flashlight with a tap of an icon, pretty easy, or getting to the camera pretty much from any screen, since I use my phone primarily as a camera. I also appreciated paginated folders, since I am an app freak, love downloading applications. I appreciate app auto updates, which I kind of showed you. Well, I didn't show you exactly because I haven't had any new apps to update. All right, let's jump out of this 3D experience. Any new apps to update? No, not really. Oh, yeah, ooh, yay! I got a couple new apps to update, so they're going to update automatically. Don't need to press the update all. I also appreciate being able to block people, because I've needed to do that in the past. You can now do that within iOS. Things I dislike. A completely unavoidable color palette that I do believe can be fixed. If Apple, this is a black phone, why is everything white? Can you make things black-ish, more darker, maybe? A bit more neutral than white? If they released a darker theme, specifically on the springboard, I would be much happier. I really would. At this point, it skews so light. Inconsistent design ethos. I've pointed out a few of those issues as I've talked through my points. Legibility, without any kind of accessibility tweaks. I don't want to have to go through and toggle system settings to fix something that should be fixed out of the box. Text, to me, in some places, is more difficult to read. The text on the folders on the springboard can be very difficult for me to see, and maybe it's because I'm 40 years old. I don't know. It could be. And by the way, feel free to ask questions in this video's comment thread. I will address them when I can here in a couple seconds as I wrap this up. Still confusing experience within the Photos application and the media store experiences. It's a minor point, but I never liked the Photos app. However, I just learned about something called Photoful, and this is a free app, and I just learned about this today. Photoful. If you don't like the way iOS manages photos, try this app. It is free. It's universal. I'm going to give it a shot. It works a lot like the new Photos app, but adds a different layer of experience to it. So give that a shot. Photoful. That's the word photo, F-U-L. And it's currently free. I don't know if that's going to change. And just to underscore, feel free to read the description, for the full breakdown. But I'm speaking fast because I'm trying to get through this as quickly as I can. It just feels rushed overall, and I don't know why so many reviewers are like singing its praises. I get it's different, and then there's some bits that are nicer and that I like a lot, but it's not that it didn't go far enough. I mean, I'm looking forward to more features, as I do with every operating system. It's just that the lack of attention to detail is the biggest concern to me, because that's been the value add for Apple. There are other operating systems that are very mature, and it's difficult to compare a mature operating system to one that's been around for a while, but that just got revised and it's a bit immature right now. And I think they're in that stage, kind of uncomfortable, not quite comfortable in their skin. Will that change? I would hope, not just with better hardware, but specifically software optimization and cleaning things up. They need to hire a designer and listen to what the designer says, because a lot of what they did here is just, it's not really working for me. Doesn't mean that I'm going to switch outright. I'm still going to get the iPhone 5S, but I've been very happy with every other device that I've showed in this channel. I like living in multiple worlds. iOS still has life in it, but Apple, I think it really needs to go back to basics and pay attention to detail and find someone who understands software UX and UI and let them kind of clean it up in an iOS 7.5 or maybe 8.0. We'll see. Chris Scott, now that I've completed this part of the review, I want to answer questions, since many of you have been very patient in watching this review, this re-review, I should say. Does iPhone 4 have the parallax and animated weather app? I do not believe so, and for good reason. Apple, they're smart about that. They would tax the system. I mean, this is quote-unquote expensive in terms of CPU power. And like I said, I've had issues on my iPhone 5 where I've seen some stutteriness that shouldn't happen if I had a powerful enough processor inside, which will happen with future hardware revisions. So I can only imagine a couple generations ago, it's doing some pretty fancy things. The animated wallpapers, I can move the iPad around and the bubbles will move. See, I see dropped frames when I rotate. May not be clear in this particular live video, but that's not something I want from Apple. Apple has kind of disappointed me. I'm happy with the updates, but I really hope they're never going to call me and hey, Chris, we understand What would you change? How would you change? I would be happy to tell them. I'd be happy to spill my guts. I've already filed a bug, and they've listened, Apple and iOS. This is a bug. Try this. Rename a folder, reboot iOS 7, and then see what that folder's name is. It will go back to its original name whenever you created the folder. It's a current bug in iOS 7. I filed it. May have been the first to report it. Just FYI. Very happy about that, too. So, do not worry if newer features and niceties do not exist in older hardware. Duh. It would create a really crappy experience, like a really bad experience. When you push too many, software, tweaks and like niceties, like flourish on top of a system that can't necessarily handle it, you end up with an awkward experience, a really bad experience. And kudos to Apple for, cutting that off at that point. I have no problem with that. Cut the rope, please. Do I even have cut the rope on here? New keyboard there. I do have cut the rope. I can't remember the last time I played it. I love Pudding Monsters from Zeptolab, though. Look at that. It's a huge... What's up with the huge... Every other notification is smaller except for the Game Center badge. What is up with that? Play. So, smooth. Frame rate moving back and forth between levels. Smooth enough. The apps themselves haven't necessarily slowed down at all. It's everything else that's just not... Just try it. I don't want to, dissuade people from trying it. I've answered a lot of the questions that I am seeing here in the video, so if you're asking questions over and over again, I probably already responded and you haven't seen that part of the live video yet. This is a good one. Connor Yannick, and I do not want to start a holy war. Do you prefer this or stock Android? Thanks, Chris. Love the vlogs. Thank you, Connor, for the support. Android in its current state, stock Android, is far more mature than iOS 7. And I think there are bits and pieces that I appreciate in Android. The geek in me appreciate bits and pieces of Android where it stands today. But Apple, God, how do I say this without starting a holy war? I'm very happy to appreciate things in both. In terms of what I like better, I don't know if there's one that I like better than the other. At least at this stage. I reach for Android devices frequently enough. Just got the Note 3 the other day, as you likely caught in the channel. To me, it's about the hardware and the software being able to surface bits and pieces about the hardware. AirPlay. Love it. I am looking forward to the 5S, if only because of the camera optimization features and that fingerprint scanner, which is more than a gimmick. I mean, I enter in my Apple ID password all the freaking time. To be able to press my thumb against a button and then just have it work because it knows it's me, awesome. And I've read plenty of documentation speaking to the powers of the hardware that Apple's working on. I question where its software is right now and whether it will be enough. And so I'm hoping, as time rolls on, that both will continue to evolve with competition. I just pointed out, I can get to Google software just as easily on iOS as I can on Android. So at which point, well, what's the difference between the two? It comes down to, well, what hardware do you want? What hardware do you like? The software, the service, the support, the experience, everything else. These are less about single devices, and I've spoken to this before, and they're more like devices in archipelago of experiences. So this works with my Apple TV. This works with my iPad. This works with the Mac. They all work. Let's see here. What else? iOS 7 or bacon? Sorry, I'm going to have to go with bacon on this one. Chris, have you noticed that the clock app now shows you the actual time on the app icon with iOS 7? I have, indeed. It does. I hate analog clocks, though. So is that a big deal for me? Not so much. Not excited. Not thrilled about that one as others might be. But, here's the thing. It's evolving. It's getting there. It's just that Apple needs to drive not just more features, but they need to refine. They need to clean up. And they need to do it quickly. And I don't just mean in a 7.1 update. I mean, they really need to iterate and clean up because they're going to get their ass handed to them if they're not careful. And some people would say they have. I would disagree. I think iPhones and iPads are still going to sell very, very well over the coming years, really. But their software needs to catch up big time. All right, just one more question maybe before we kind of head out here. Someone was asking if I see the weather in the notification center. I did, but as I swipe down to see the weather, the font changed thickness. It's just a bug, a quirk, a UI hiccup that I've noticed a couple of other times before which really is kind of disappointing. All right, I still want to answer questions. I love answering questions. Any others that I can really answer, truly answer, that I haven't already answered? Okay, well, here's a good one. Are you going to downgrade to iOS 6? Asks TGS Brecht 13. Well, Wicked already has. Well, don't listen to him, though. He didn't want to upgrade Twitter and Facebook, and he was kind of forced to. No, I had no issues with iOS 6. I didn't. So that's not to say that I wouldn't necessarily have any issues with iOS 7 more that might be different from iOS 6. It's just that, was I ready for a change? Maybe, but I just don't know if this is a great change. I still don't feel the need to downgrade to go back to iOS 6. I think there's enough nice things and additions to iOS 7 that would keep me there for now, in the belief that they would refine and clean up. My God, Apple needs to clean up iOS 7. And if no other quote-unquote tech reviewer would say that or be so bold because they want to stay in Apple's good graces, well, then I'm going to be so bold as to say it's buggy and they need to clean it up and their design is all over the map and I expected better from Apple. And yet I continue to buy Apple devices. Just like I buy Google devices. So what can I say? I like things. So I buy things that I like. Now, speaking of things that I like, before I do wrap up, let me please mention Audible.com. I have been enjoying Audible. It's available on iOS. You basically can listen to almost an unlimited amount of ebooks, audiobooks. And granted, they have a limited library, but it's near unlimited. And I've been listening to so many books that I otherwise would never have read. But since I drive places or sometimes am doing something else, I want to engage my mind in something deeper. And Audible has swept in and has been such a great help. You can get a 30-day trial and one free audiobook download, valued at whatever you want to spend on it, with that free audiobook download, so I guess you wouldn't be spending anything. Use the link audible.com/LockerGnome. I've got a library that you've seen in the videos that I've done in the past. I've got a long library of books that I've started, some that I've finished, and it really has become my preference to taking in content, long-form content, books. I don't want to read. I want to listen. Just like you're watching this, you're going to watch this video, you're not going to read. Same thing with audiobooks, only there's no video. It's like a movie without the pictures. Movies in your head. Thanks to Audible for supporting this community. Thank you for supporting this community. I appreciate everything that you do. The subscriptions and all the social accounts, the shares, the likes, the comments, and the support in general. I can't understate that enough. Thank you. If I can answer any other questions, I will do my best. Remember, we have a Friday live stream coming up this week. Again, I hope to have the iPhone 5S on Friday for a live unboxing. How does that sound? Okay. I hope it sounds good, because I'm going to wrap up now. Here I go, wrapping up. Gonna wrap. You don't want to hear me rap though, because I can't rap really. I'm just gonna go ahead and watch another one of my videos now. Can I? Here I go. For real this time.